It's Friday and I'm out in the garden while the sun is still shining, expecting the rain and the cold to come in on Sunday as the forecasters are currently predicting. Nursery rhymes are becoming a big thing in our house just now, and Hannah Leah just bellows out many different songs, often in tune. Sometimes they're a little bit hit and missy, but still they are a part of every day just now. One nursery rhyme in particular has a great and deep, powerful message for us, and it encapsulates for me everything that has been on my mind in preparation for this Sunday's service. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? Okay, maybe it's not so deep or spiritually meaning after all, but that question of how does your garden grow has been quite interesting in these recent days. I was so pleased when we moved to Erskine that we had a garden with grass and space to plant, rather than the stony and concrete garden we left behind. Now, I love gardening, and so I was looking forward to getting some life and colour into the garden. But then lockdown came. So this year has been a challenge when it comes to locating and finding plants for the garden. Now, my normal practice would have been to go to a garden centre with an abundance of options available to me, a buffet, if you like, of glorious foliage and blossoming colours. Well, this year we can't, well, not yet anyway, but I still want to see some life. As a family, a few weeks ago, we prepared the big planting area at the back of the garden. It's a raised bed that, prior to our influence, was covered up with stones and a couple of plant pots. It was limited growth. Instead, what we did was we dug it up, and it revealed some rich, untouched soil. There was no mess, there was no weeds, there was just pure muck, ready for some extra care, and most importantly, ready for that life. The only thing was, the abundance of choices that the garden centre would have offered was simply unavailable. So this year, the garden has grown, but it's grown slowly. With each week, some small plants and colour are arriving thanks to Aldi and Morrison's. The only thing was, I had only available to me what they were offering that day. And so each time we did our essential food shop, a plant or two went into the basket too. You know, sometimes, and particularly in this lockdown, the spiritual growth of our own lives might well be at risk. Like the abundant provision of the garden centres, perhaps before lockdown our spiritual resources relied heavily on the abundance of church activity, Bible studies, worship, and even just fellowship. You know, perhaps we became so reliant on those things that when, like the garden centres closing, we lost our main source of hope and spiritual nourishment. So here's my question: where do we get our spiritual food from when the main supplies are significantly challenged? In these moments of lockdown, we can begin to see what we truly relied on for our growth and our relationship with God. The reality is, if I want to see growth in my garden, if I want to see life regardless of the situation around me, then I must ensure that I use every small opportunity, sparse as they may be, to sow new life, to plant new hope into the ground. You know, it's no different for us spiritually. And we can't sit by waiting until things return back to normal before we invest once more in our own personal journey and invest in that relationship with God. If I waited, for example, until the garden centres reopened properly again, I may find that I have missed some key opportunities in the growing season, and therefore miss some of the fruits of the harvest. Same here. Same with our souls. We can't let lockdown be a lockdown on our souls, and we can't allow it to lock down our relationship with God. I read somewhere only this week that God is not isolating from us, and so we can't isolate ourselves from him. Psalm 42, which we read earlier, gives us a real picture of what many of us perhaps are feeling just now. You might be familiar with Psalm 24, but for Psalm 42, unlike Psalm 24, with the sheep being led to green pastures and by quiet streams, Psalm 42 describes a deer in desperation. There's no quiet waters, there's no green pastures. It pants, it's on the run, and it's in need of desperate and immediate help. And this deer is longing for it's thirsting for refreshment, water, which is life to it. Now, some commentators suggest that this deer is running from a hunt. It's being hunted, and its fight for survival is real, and it is frantic. And its hope is found in the water, and the refreshment to keep it going. And in Psalm 42, the psalmist writes that just like the deer, my soul pants for you, O God. The need for God is real, and the question of the psalmist is, where can I go to meet with you, Lord? I'm surrounded by people who question if you are even here. These words speak of a real need to search out God. You know, if your reliance has been solely on church programme and activities, on hearing the word from others and prayers led by others, then now is the time to search God out for new sources. By reading his word, praying, listening and searching him in new ways. You know, we don't know when churches will open again and when we will be able to have fellowship that leads to genuine spiritual nourishment and growth. But even so, we must not neglect the nourishment of our souls, the planting of hope and life. Yes, we have to go to places we haven't gone before. We have to seek Jesus in new ways we haven't before. It might be that we have to make time for worshipping at home, reading our Bible more, or picking up books we haven't read before. The garden centres are shut, but there's still an abundance of life available for my garden. The church buildings are shut, but there is no limit to the abundance of God's grace and mercy and his Spirit amongst us. So as we continue in this new phase of this faith journey, may you and I discover more of the abundance of God's Spirit and His presence regardless of what is happening around us. God bless you.